Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah. All praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashem Rakah Kodash. Double honors unto the elders and the apostles who taught me this truth. This is Counselor Dawad, the real brother beloved, and this is only for the elect.
Only for the elect.
The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?
Population control, the practice of artificially maintaining the size of any population. It typically refers to the act of limiting the size of an animal population so that it remains manageable, as opposed to the act of protecting a species from excessive rates of extinction, which is referred to as conservation biology.
The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So who's the wicked? Well, whose hands, meaning whose control is the earth under? By now you should be familiar with the 1% comprised of the world's elite banking families. These elite globalists are predominantly made up of so-called wealthy whites who reside in the upper echelons of society. Undoubtedly, this determines them to be the heritage of the biblical Edomites, descendants of the patriarch Isaac's son, Esau-Edom. We know this through the wisdom of the scriptures, the fruits of their labor, and the blessing Esau received from his father Isaac, the fatness of the earth and the dew of the heaven. And that's pursuant to Genesis 27, verse 39. Present day, this means the priceless possessions of the earth that only money can buy, and the blessing of the sword, meaning he maintains his governance through military might, cunning, and violence. And that's pursuant to Genesis 25, verse 27, and then chapter 27, verse 40. Without a doubt, that is the so-called white man today.
He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. Who else has gone through extensive measures to cover the true biblical identity of the Jews, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians? It is he that is responsible for the whitewashing of the so-called black saints of the Bible and the black royals and nobles of Europe through iconoclasm.
If not, where and who is he? Who else lives in Malibu Colony Beach and pompously tells you the racial ethnicity of Yahweh Shah, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus, doesn't matter, but has exhausted his ill-gotten gains in soliciting clandestine efforts to hide his identity?
Who else has you believing in a white Jesus and rules under insanely stringent laws with stiffer penalties? Who else employs economic hitmen to destabilize nations so he can commandeer their government and rape them of their natural resources? Who else raped, robbed, and pillaged the so-called Native Indians, enslaved the so-called Negroes, and sold them to the world as Africans? The wicked
is Esau-Edom.
Who else has sought to cull the world population, proposing to kill 5 billion global citizens with eugenics and population control?
Eugenics, the science of improving a human population by controlled breeding to increase the occurrence of desirable heritable characteristics. Developed largely by Francis Galton as a method of improving the human race, it fell into disfavor only after the perversion of its doctrines by the Nazis.
Eugenics and population control are long-time hobbies of the financial elites. In the early 1900s, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Institute were deeply involved in promoting eugenics laws in the US. The eugenics programs in the US were only a beta test though, as the Rockefellers then transferred their programs over to Germany under Hitler and the Third Reich in the 1930s, were a true widespread eugenics. based population control program was introduced. The targets of population reduction were based on ethnic background, but also mental intelligence and economic status. Let's not forget Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, the organization's founder who opened the first birth control clinic in America. Sanger was a leading advocate of the eugenics movement, specifically of negative eugenics, which promoted the reduction of sexual reproduction and sterilization of people with undesired traits or economic conditions. Sanger believed in the supremacy of the white race and the inferiority of other racial groups. For instance, she once wrote, "It is said that the Aboriginal Australian, the lowest known species of the human family, just a step higher than the chimpanzee in brain development, has so little sexual control that police authority alone prevents him from obtaining sexual satisfaction on the streets." The Negro Project, instigated in 1939 by Margaret Sanger, was said to be an initiative to provide Southern black women and families with access to birth control and other forms of contraception. But it is almost impossible to argue the effects of her ideas and organizations surrounding white superiority, eugenics and population control, did not lead to the destruction of black communities nationwide. In the late 1960s into the 1970s there was a resurgence of population control rhetoric coming out of globalist circles. Under the supervision of the United Nations and some related scientific groups, the Club of Rome was formed. A prominent part of the Club of Rome's agenda was population reduction. In 1972 the group of scientists under the UN's direction published a paper called The Limits of Growth, which called for greatly reduced human population in the name of saving the environment. This effort was directly linked to another agenda, the institution of a global government that could handle and enforce population controls on a wide scale. The elites had found a new scientific front for their eugenics obsession, climate science. In the early 1990s the Club of Rome published a book called The First Global Revolution. In it they state,
"In searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like, would fit the bill. In their totality and their interactions these phenomena do constitute a common threat which must be confronted by everyone together. But in designating these dangers as the enemy, we fall into the trap, which we have already warned readers about, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself."
Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand?